Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Are you hearing me? Hello, am I being heard? Good afternoon.
You're being
Good
heard.
afternoon. Yes, we're hearing you.
Thank you. I am Mrs. Odette Marshall, and I will be your host for today. Thank you for joining us today for today's series. And it's going to be quite interesting today to have our presenter speak on a familiar for some, non-familiar for some topic. And as such, we will not hold you any further hostage. We will go into our presentation. So thank you for joining us today. And I pray that whatever we share will be informative and that you could take back to your own space, whether home or work, and it will be of good use to you. So today our presenter will be none other than Lieutenant Colonel Sterling. And I'll just give you a little background of Colonel before he presents. Lieutenant Colonel Sterling served in the Jamaica Defense Force for more than 24 years in a number of staff and command roles. 15 of those years he spent in various ICT and cyber-related roles. But more recent, he served as the Deputy Managing Director of Operations at the state-owned Jamaica Urban Transit Company. Currently, he serves as the Director for the Jamaica Cyber Incident Response Team Division, where he manages the National Security Operations Center, the NSOC, and the Jamaica Cyber Incident Response Team, JCIRT, where he spearheads the legal, regulatory, technical, and human resource and capacity building, as well as the public education and awareness efforts of Jamaican's government. He also sits as the Jamaican's representative on the project steering committee developing the CARICOM Cyber Resilient Strategy 2030. Colonel Sterling does hold a number of certificates in cybersecurity from the U.S. Army War College and the IEEE and the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He also earns in the automation form of the U.S. Army Signal School, Florida International University. He also earns a degree in honors in computer science from the University of Technology and a master's in defense study, cybersecurity from the Royal Military College of Canada and the cybersecurity from Universidad Isabel, one in Madrid, Spain. Without further ado, I want you to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Sterling to today's presentation. The floor is yours, Colonel Sterling.
Hi, good afternoon, all, and thank you for attending. This is the second in our lecture series. If I can be allowed to share, which is already up, confirm you're seeing my screen in presentation mode.
We're seeing your screen.
Well, thank you. So when we think about cybersecurity, oftentimes in Jamaica, we think about cybersecurity only in October. But this is a year-long effort by the Cyber Incident Response Team, which is a part of the Cyber Incident Response Team division in the Office of the Prime Minister. And one of the things that we try to do in October is just really to amplify the work we do so that persons can appreciate the other months of the year that we do not do it. It's just like Christmas. We treat each other with love and respect throughout the year, but when Christmas comes or when it's our birthday, we tend to put a little bit more effort into what we do. The series this year seeks to really sort of bring home the challenges that cyber globally is facing, where a lot of the challenges seem to be with respect to the inability for persons to really raise their cyber hygiene to a level that is commensurate with the safe use of cyberspace. And really, it translates into organizations, and the level of cyber delinquency therein continues to be of concern. So for this, the second week of activities for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we're really focusing on those things that we can do to raise that awareness, but more importantly, to raise the level of cyber hygiene and similarly decrease the level of cyber delinquency in our cyberspace. It really is going to be a quick run through, because if we were to take the topic as it is laid out there, it would take probably a couple of sessions in order to get through it. But what we're seeking to do is really to compress a lot of the information into a package that we can deliver in 35, 40 minutes. And so that is what we're going to be treating with today. Mrs. Marshall would have spoken quite a bit about me. So this screen really seeks to just summarize that. You know, at the heart of it, I am a soldier. I would have spent all my adult life before joining the public service in the military. And, you know, the other bits and pieces are where I have studied, worked, or just done stuff having to do with cyber throughout the latter years of my career. And so today, I speak to you not as somebody with what seems to be a fairly detailed background, but just as someone who has an interest in cyber, just a cyber professional helping you to improve your security and safety in cyberspace. So a personal area network really refers to that ability or that construct that persons now have to bring the different pieces of their digital lives together in one little box, if one can look at it that way. And so it really does not seek to allow or require persons to log into other people's networks. You know, if we think practically about it, if we remember when I think it was Digicel who first introduced the MiFi device, and you know everybody wanted one because it allowed you to basically carry the internet in your pocket, and you could connect your phone, you could connect your laptop, and you would be good whilst you were away from a regular fiber or copper network. The fact is that wireless technology has evolved in such a way that the very cell phones that we carry now have so much power that they allow us to, you know, create hotspots, and, you know, we tether things to it, and we're able to carry on working. Additionally, in Jamaica, the cellular network would have improved significantly to allow for a greater level of fidelity in terms of the connection. So you're not grappling with your connection dropping all the time anymore. So once you connect your cell phone, usually you can actually get a reasonably strong signal to allow you to connect your laptop, tablet, or other devices and be able to operate. We've seen a shift away from the laptops with SIM cards inserted, even though that does still apply to some tablets, and we see that happening. But by and large, the cell phone has replaced that mobile Wi-Fi device that we got used to in the latter part of the last decade, and is now at the center of that IoT network that we're thinking about. When we think about the Internet of Things, you know, we no longer have to worry about just having an iPhone and having Siri, because the Android folks now have Alexa as well as others. You know, most of the cars that we drive nowadays, you can use the Android Auto or the iOS Auto, and you can communicate with that vehicle as you drive it. And so overall, our network is expanding. The light bulbs, we can have augmentations for our sockets that allow for the intelligent use of electricity within our houses. When we think about even appliances, we're seeing where the newer models, the washers, the dryers, the stoves, even the refrigerators, microwaves, they are coming with the ability to be incorporated into that network. And so when we think about it, the network really is shifting from the Internet of Things to the Internet of Everything, where if you think about it, chances are you can get digitally enabled or an internet enabled version of it, and you can use it. Now, what this brings is a lot of efficiency to you as the individual as you move about. And so, you can no longer, well, it might be good and it might be bad, because you can no longer say, well, I wasn't able to use the laptop, even though you had a phone, because now the phone allows you to connect to it to use a laptop. And you can also now see a lot of what happens at home, depending on how smart your home is, from doorbells through light bulbs to your appliances, in terms of getting that awareness bit of it going. So when we think about your personal area network, what we're saying is, with you at the center of it and whatever device you use to connect centrally to the wider internet, you can now connect everything else into that network. And with the Internet of Things, the list continues to grow. Part and parcel of your personal area network is your home network. And I'm going to spend a little time here because, except for those of us who work or go to school, we spend quite a bit of time at home. And the home network, I really want to walk through it with you. So if we start with your internet service provider, whether that is wired or wireless or satellite, as a subset of the wireless connection back to the internet, we have a choice now. And, it's really going to come down to a matter of quality of service, who or what provides our internet connectivity. But from that supplier, if it's not a wired connection back to the internet backbone, what we're looking at is, how are you connected? I mean, does the fiber terminate at your gate, or is the fiber then converted to a copper wire that comes into your home? And once that does, is that entry point secure? So is it somewhere that I can walk up to it and connect a couple of data clips and get in on your connection? So when we think about security, that is where I want to start, at that entry point into your home. If you're using satellite internet or wireless connectivity back to your ISP, is the satellite dish or the wireless receiver in a place where it is secure? When you think about wireless receivers, oftentimes you stick it on the building or close to the building where you get maximum reception. And similarly for your satellite dishes, you're going to put it where you can get the maximum reception. And what we're seeking to get here is that position is secure. So from there, we're going to get inside the house, usually to the router. And here we're talking about what you bring into the home. Is it that the supplier provided the router, or are you using your own router provided by an independent third party? When that router comes out of the box, what is it that we're utilizing? Are we taking the default settings on that router and just plugging it in? And because we're connected now, we're good to go. And when we think about it, the challenge that we're faced with here is that a lot of the homeowners, the parents, the grandparents, are not so savvy that sometimes they ask the questions that need to be asked. So when that technician connects and shows you that your TV works, your phone works, everything else work. What do you do with it? And so the challenge we face here is how do we ensure that that bit of it is dealt with? Now, one of the things that we do not often pay attention to, which a lot of the newer routers will have, is the ability to set up and configure a firewall, which is built into the router, or to enable encryption, or to enable the hiding of the SSID for the network, or to enable the filtering of the devices that connect to it, whether through MAC address or something else. And so these are connections that really, if you can't do it yourself, you probably need to bring someone in to actually walk you through. And there are many companies out there that provide managed security services or managed IT services, and you can bring one in and have them walk you through how to do that configuration of the router so that you can get the best and most secure use out of it. Then once you have the router set up, you have to think about how your household is set up. Do you have children of different ages? For example, teenagers on the one hand, K to 12, or toddlers on the other, plus you yourself might use the network to work from home from time to time. What we want to see here is, for those more modern routers, the ability to segment your home network into virtual local area networks, or just to have a production network, for want of a better term, as well as guest network that you can actually segment it, create different passwords. You can allocate the bandwidth in different ways so that people who visit your home do not need to connect to your part of the router services, but you can actually have them connect to the guest services and you can use that. Additionally, some of the more advanced routers allow you to segregate your IoT devices into a separate segment on the same router, and you can use that to push it through. Once you get past the router and you decide how you're going to segment your network, if your router allows it, then it's to decide how and what the different devices can do. So we're talking about, if you move from your person to the house, your smartwatch, if you have one, your cell phone, your laptop. How does the use of your network really allow you to treat with those different devices? If you're going to bring your appliances online, are you going to divide your house into the different rooms? So your kitchen appliances are separate from your washing appliances, from your other appliances, and some of the routers actually allow you to do that. How are you going to connect? Are you going to connect just using Wi-Fi? For example, you now have the advancement in near-field technology or near-field communication that allows for the sharing of files without even being logged into the network. You have Bluetooth that you can walk through your house with the headphones on and you can follow it through. Your TV system might be so set up that you can pause your show in one room and pick it up on the TV in another room. So how you utilize the technology within the space is really going to determine how you segment your network if your router allows it. And depending on where around the house you have other devices, you might want to use extenders for your router. There are two basic types that we use. There's the wired one, where you have to plug a Cat5 or Cat6 or other cable into both devices, but it allows you to extend the range of your device. But you also have the wireless one, where you can take it to the very edge of the coverage for your primary router and then connect it, and it will extend the range of your router within your space. Now, when you think about that, you also have to think about one of the things that was quite popular in the latter part of the last decade, which is drive-by attacks and leeching of your Wi-Fi signal, where persons would just simply drive by your house, realize that they could access your Wi-Fi from the street. They would then park, and depending on the security on your device, they would leech services from your device without your even knowing. So once this happens and you think about it, you now have to think more carefully about security, especially if you have like security cameras, surveillance cameras that are connected, that you're going to be monitoring from your mobile devices, etc. It requires that you pay particular attention to some of the things. And let's start with the cell phone or the laptop, the mobile devices. When we think about this, oftentimes for some of us, we do not think about the segregation of work and personal use devices. Now, if you use your cell phone to connect to a wireless access point at work, which is used by people generally, the question is, when you get back home, are you bringing something into the home that you would not have thought about? Malware, hardware, or other forms of compromise to your device. And the reverse is true. So when you think about your device interconnectivity, the recommendation here is that you have to treat with how your work requires you to utilize your home network. Now, we know the pandemic foisted upon us the need to work from home quite a bit. And we have sort of normalized that behavior. But how much of our working from home compromises our home networks? Because the devices that we bring home probably have compromises on them. And so that's a challenge. Additionally, when we think about it, are our home networks at the level of security and or other construct that allows us not to bring compromised devices back into work? When we think about bandwidth, more and more the devices that we use, the applications that we use are requiring that we have higher bandwidth. And sometimes the service providers, once you get over a certain threshold, they will charge more for it. One of the ways you can actually manage your bandwidth is if you have a more modern router to give the bandwidth to the people or the devices in your home that needs it. The other is security vulnerability. When we think about security vulnerabilities, it's not just about somebody hacking the router that's in your house. It's about you going to the restaurant, you logging on through a captive portal to free Wi-Fi. You know, you enjoy the evening, you come back in and you simply connect to your home network. What did you bring? Was the captive portal compromised? Did it actually compromise your device that you're bringing back into the home with vulnerabilities and or security challenges that you would not have had otherwise? Device management is something else. When you think about your children, you know, sharing of passwords is something that become a significant challenge. And that child might live in the neighborhood and, you know, your child brings them home and the password gets shared and then the password gets shared and then the password gets shared. And again, if the range of your home network is such that people can just come and lounge around your house and connect, and that password is being shared, then it significantly lowers the security posture for you, your family, and your home network. When we think about automation, the Internet of Things allows for a lot of things. It's so much easier to say, Alexa, turn the light down, or Alexa, turn on the stove, or to, from your phone while you're driving home, the meal that you left in the oven in the morning, you can turn the oven on and it is hot when you get home. You don't have to wait on it. But the reverse is also true, that if that connection gets compromised, then it can be used to create challenges for your home device, particularly if you have air conditioning or the stove, which uses propane or butane, that can be turned on without being lit. And when you get in, you have methane type poisoning that you have to treat with as these things go. So what we're talking about are practical examples of how the Internet of Things and the advances in technology allow you to expand the levels of efficiency in your home, but it requires that you also treat with the security side as you move through. The Internet of Things is really meant to add convenience and efficiency. Security was never built into these devices as a matter of route. So security by design or default is not the primary consideration for a lot of the IoT devices, but we can secure networks so that when we use them on it, we're not compromising everything. The Internet of Everything really just sort of broadens that. Now, if we think about local examples, JPS has their RAMI system, and through that installation, they can offer prepaid electricity, or they're able to turn your power off without visiting your home or turn it back on. The NWC is going that route as well. Now, when we think about these smart meters and connections, how much of what goes into that point from the meter into our homes do we understand? Do we ask the technicians who come to read the meters about these meters, or do we just take it for granted that, okay, it's a smart meter, they're here. It means I can always get my power turned back on, or I can always log on and see what my usage is. But these are questions that we really need to bring into it. And when we think about how we utilize the additional items, especially as we move from the home into our personal space outside, we have to recognize that near field communication also allows for those channels to be compromised. For example, Bluetooth. We have a Bluetooth headset, we have a mobile device, but we are not always using the headset. So why do we keep the connection always on? This can be utilized to hack your device. It can be utilized to put stuff on your device that you don't want. And I'm deliberately staying away from the woefully technical settings, because the idea here is not to deliver a lecture to a group of IT professionals, but more so to raise awareness of some of the pitfalls. And so these are things that we have to treat with. The more you connect IoT and IoET things to your network, the more vulnerable it becomes. And especially if you're not managing the backbone, then it creates challenges for you. So if we think about how we use technology in our daily lives, then we can understand and appreciate that. Now, one of the challenges that we face is that we often see the means of securing our networks as being a little bit of a bugbear, something that, yeah, we should do it, we'll get to it, but really something else always comes up and we never get it done. The challenge we face when we do that is we're not just putting ourselves as individuals, as fathers, as mothers, as parents, as aunts, uncles in danger, but we're also allowing for those younger ones who probably don't understand the concepts that are being talked about when we talk about security to become vulnerable. And this is something that we can basically avoid if we just pay some attention. Now, we know the challenges, right? But let us think about how we can fix some of them. So on your screen, you have some vulnerabilities that are there, and we can treat with it. Now, one of the things we're pushing here in Jamaica is that universal payment scheme where you can pay for anything from anything. So you can pay from your watch, you can pay from your phone, your credit card, debit card, you can pay with cash. The challenge that this creates is that in a society where the attitude towards security is as low as it is, and where for some businesses, cyber delinquency is what it is, when we think about our personal era network, we really need to segment it. So, dedicate certain devices to certain tasks so that if in the event one gets compromised, you have your entire pan isn't compromised. And what that will allow you to do is, for example, if you're going to have a digital wallet, just keep it on your phone. Don't try to sync it with your watch and pay with your watch when you want to, unless you've been able to secure both devices in such a way that you're not going to end up being a victim. The reverse is true, that you need to think very carefully about merchants at which you use certain devices and how their setup is, from their point of sale machines all the way through their back-end connections into their banks. It's something that you have to treat with. So when you think about that digital transaction using a device in your PAN, are you confident that your financial institution will have the sort of setup that will allow you to query, especially things like double P? And the system ought to prevent that, but things happen. And so we have to treat with that. Now, when you bring all of that home, it's not good enough to say, well, Flow came and they installed the router and, the picture quality is good, the Wi-Fi signal is strong, but, he really wrote down the password and gave it to me, and I can't bother to change it. So I'm going to leave it there, and you just leave it. Go ahead, get somebody to change it. And believe me, our teenagers and our young children, 10, 12 years old, they understand some of these concepts a lot better than people of our age, because we are the digital migrants, they are the digital natives. And, they appreciate technology in a way that we can only hope to strive towards. When we travel, whether it is locally or abroad, if we really don't need to use unsecured networks, then don't use it. And if we have to use it, then ensure that what we're doing on it is something that will not compromise our devices or networks later. Firmware updates is a pain. And one of the challenges is that oftentimes the manufacturers don't announce it, or we don't follow the manufacturers either through their websites or socials. So we're not aware that the updates are there. But from time to time, it really would be good if we appreciate that these are vulnerabilities that can be fixed, and we go and check and where the updates exist. If we don't understand how to do it, get somebody who can to do it. When we have IoT devices, whatever they are, the light bulbs, the sockets, the appliances, the gadgets, secure them, secure the network on which we use them, and ensure that we treat with those things as best as possible. Physical access is not something that we pay particular attention to. You're at the bar and you're there with your buds, so you just get up, leave your phone, and you go to the restroom. But who has access to your phone once you've gotten up? You're in a meeting and you have to go outside to deal with something, and you just leave your laptop with the screen open and you leave it up. Yes, we really should trust the people that we're that close to. But in this age, it's better to verify and to be called paranoid than to be called a victim of a cyber issue that you could have prevented. When we think about our homes and our person, including our vehicles, what steps do we take with respect to physical access, and how do we treat with those as we move through our daily space? I often hear people talk about phishing as being this great thing, but phishing is just one aspect of social engineering. The construct of social engineering is as old as the considerations for cybersecurity itself. And, for those who are as long in the tooth as I am, we remember the days when we used to go through people's garbage to find old credit card receipts. Those credit cards that used to be on the slide and print paper, the carbon paper that people used to just carry home and throw in the trash. We used to go through people's waste to get their discarded letters, and we used to build profiles. All of that data today exists online, and a lot of it is accessible through our home networks and our personal devices. And these tend to be less secured from the traditional cybersecurity, information security standpoints, and are more easily accessible. What it means, therefore, is that we have to be much more vigilant in how we build out our PAN or home network so that we do not increase our attack surface beyond what we can really manage. Additionally, we have to couple that with increased awareness about our surroundings, our usage practices, or where we go and what we do with these devices. And then we have to recognize what is our digital asset? Where is the information treasure within what we do? Is our health data somewhere where it's secure? Is our financial data somewhere where it's secure? The personal files that we have, do we have them always on the device that we travel around with, or do we have them backed up somewhere at home or in the cloud? Now, while we talk about the cloud, one has to appreciate that the cloud is just a computer in somebody else's network, probably in another jurisdiction. But we really have to start thinking about how much we carry on the personal devices that are always on our person, how easily accessible it is, and how sensitive that data is. The common attacks are there, but they become more sophisticated, they become more pervasive. So when we think, for example, of phishing, up to 3 years ago, there were common things that we taught people to look for to identify phishing campaigns. All of that has now to be debunked and rethought because the advent of generative AI allows for the creation of nigh perfect emails and websites that are no longer subject to the emotional or cultural nuances that would be prevalent in some of the previous campaigns. And so we have to think about that. Man-in-the-middle attack, we talk about drive-by leeching and attacks on your network. It's a similar thing where that communication between your personal device and your network connection to the internet can be intercepted mid-flight. When we think about it, a simple device as a flipper zero allows for that interception of your car's remote signal to your car, between your car and your house, so that we can unlock your car with a flipper zero. And so these are some of the things that we have to think about. And do not think that because you're in Jamaica, you're not at risk or are going to be subject to the challenges, because these devices are here. They're not necessarily widespread or being used widely, but they're here and they're being utilized. When we think about botnets, it goes without saying. We here at the CIRT see the creation, growth, dissolution, reemergence of botnets on a daily basis. And there is a challenge. DDoS, we're not seeing so much of, but it exists out there. And usually it is designed to just simply take your internal network down by flooding the gateway with so much traffic that your legitimate traffic cannot pass through. And so what we're finding is that more and more we may end up being caught in it because the infrastructure that we're using, particularly at places like malls and restaurants, airports, are not necessarily secure. Firmware exploits, the companies have done their work. Nobody is going to sit down until they get 100% perfect device to put it out there on the market. But when the updates, upgrades, and patches come out, we who are owners have a responsibility to ensure that we patch. and we update and we upgrade. And if the device needs to be thrown out, no matter how sentimental it got, if you want to, then you can clean it and put it down nicely for display. But we need to ensure that we keep the devices up to date as best as we can. We've been really sort of talking through the best practices as we go on, and you realize that if we go down the list on your screen, when we talk about luck, what we're talking about is not LUCK, which is a fortuitous happening of something, but we're talking about long, as in your password, unique, as in your password, and complex, as in your password. So we drop the K and we keep it at LUC. And that's how we really want you to treat your passwords. The fact is that a lot of entities, including Google and Microsoft, are forcing you to move away from passwords to get to passphrases and to get to passwordless access to your device. You have to become more au fait with how these things work and how they will impact you and the ability to utilize them as you continue to use your devices. Two-factor authentication is the simplest of multi-factor authentication, but it adds another layer that will allow you to really sort of try to secure your digital identity. The updates of not only the software, but the firmware. So for example, when we think about our Android devices, we go to settings, we go to update, we search for device or OS update, and we update it. But we have 300 applications on the phone that we really don't seek to update. And unless when we do the device update, it seeks to optimize the applications, they never get updated. But all you have to do is just to click on the Play Store icon, go to the image that has your profile picture or your profile designation, and go to managing the applications that are there, check for updates, and sometimes the number of updates that you see there will surprise you. And you can do this on a regular basis because those applications get updated much more frequently than the operating system of the device that you're working with. Use encryption. You know, when BlackBerry was a thing, encryption came almost by default with every BlackBerry device you had. With a lot of the more modern phones, you have to go in and turn it on, but you can turn it on. And especially when you have a lot of images or documents stored on your device, encrypt it. It doesn't really take that much. Additionally, try to encrypt the communication between your device and your network or your devices as you go along. Emails. Many of the email applications that we use allow for the encryption of your email transmissions. Utilize it. PGP may sound old. That's pretty good privacy, but it still works. And what it does is allow you to have a private key, but to give out a public key that people can use to encrypt transmissions or communications with you. And that works very well. If your router allows it, segment your network. That way, if things in one segment of it get compromised, everything in your house or your PAN do not get compromised at the same time. When we think about how powerful our cell phones and other mobile devices are, we really are not using all the features on there. Take the time, sometimes on an evening when you have nothing to do, you're watching the news, and just go through and turn off the features that you're not using. You can always turn them back on if you have a need. And, you know, buyer beware. We live in a market-driven economy. And when we do buy something, whether it is that we are going to challenge the transaction or we're going to challenge the quality of the device, it is always up to you to check what it is you're buying based on what your needs are and ensure that you do this on a consistent basis to minimize some of the challenges that you might have. It's not going to stop. The development of technology, the miniaturization of devices, the increase in the power and intelligence of devices is going to continue. And so what we're going to see is the ability to make our personal area networks or our home networks much more smart, and to gain more efficiencies from implementing some of the technologies. But it will always come with that responsibility on us to ensure that we pay attention to artificial intelligence and machine learning, understanding that they are here to improve our experiences if used for good, but they can create catastrophic situations for us if used by malicious actors for bad. As such, government will continue to and have to work as a facilitator as far as regulating the growth, development, adoption, and use of some of these technologies, but it will only be able to regulate the space in which it is used. The use of it will continue as technology continues to improve and the integration into our daily lives get more and more intertwined in just how we have to operate. So that was a mouthful essentially. And what we're really trying to do is to ensure that you understand and appreciate the efficiencies that the developments in technology and the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to improve the Internet of Things into the Internet of Everything allows for us to bring into our daily lives. To understand that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. At the very simplest, there are three tiers to it. There is the individual, the body corporate, and government. The individual has the responsibility to improve awareness and reduce delinquency, thereby driving cyber hygiene up. The body corporate similarly, but government must act as a regulator and facilitator for some of these technologies. And the lifespan for technology is so short that if we really sort of tune out for too long, we will miss the boat. So stay tuned into the manufacturers of your devices. Trusted websites that will give you tips and tricks to secure and get the best out of your devices, and patch, update, upgrade as they become available. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time, and I will be open to any questions that may be in the chat or anyone may have. So you can indicate by raising your hand, and I'm sure the moderator will allow for the question to be asked.
Thank you, Colonel Sterling. Are there any questions? And as we await our guests to digest all that information that you have shared with us, Colonel, I'm thinking over what you just said, and I'm thinking about floppy disks and CDs to thumb drive, and it shows how we have transcended through time with technology. I mean, you put it wonderfully. The Internet of Things is the Internet of everything. From a pin to an anchor, you can search and you can find information at your fingertip. Whether through Google or YouTube, it is there. And we have come a far way with technology. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing a hand raise. But my question to you, Colonel Sterling, moving from smartphones to smart devices like TV, refrigerators, and so forth, and coming a little bit closer to home, to work. With, if I may say, with the exception of some entities, especially those in the data protection and possibly the cybersecurity field who really understand security, how can you change, for wanting of a better word, the attitude or that posture of regular employees regarding the security risks that are there? Because, most times person will send an email and send them randomly, and you open the email and that's it. But no, we can encrypt the email and send it, but people are like, why is he or why is she encrypting the email and I have to ask permission and they can't bother? And then you walk into the office one morning and you realize there's a two-factor authenticator on and people make it difficult and they complain about it. But how can we encourage persons to accept this kind of new trend in the whole matter of security? Especially for those who aren't so versed with cybersecurity in particularly.
Thank you for the question, Mrs. Marshall. Well, it really starts with the management of change. If you're in an organization, it really does not help to just spring changes onto your employees overnight. So if you're going to be utilizing multi-factor authentication in the organization, you really want to get people warmed up to the idea. As well, you have to think about that secondary device that is going to be required to do the authentication. And you have to ensure that if it's a corporate requirement, then the corporation has a responsibility to ensure that this can happen. With respect to matters like encryption, it comes down, if it's not a corporate policy, to your personal awareness within cyberspace and how you're going to treat with your information that you're sharing. The challenge that we face a lot of times is that we think because we're good people, everybody else out there is. And oftentimes that's not the case. And so we've got to, as individuals, and hopefully it becomes a community movement where we think we anticipate that persons will behave responsibly, but we prepare for them not doing so. And so we're able to counter whatever the challenges are. In our personal space, we've got to appreciate that anybody who gets a hold of a cell phone, a thumb drive, or anything else in your personal area network, or who gets onto your home network without your permission these days has no good intent. And if that is the case, then the challenge is how do we prevent the impact of any compromise from being devastating and maximize the time that we can actually recover and recover stronger. So cybersecurity from the personal standpoint, which we're looking at today, really comes down to your responsibility to yourself and those for whom you're responsible, and how you treat the best practices that are out there with respect to the devices and the activities that you undertake in cyberspace in order to ensure that you can have as secure an experience as possible.
Okay, thank you, Colonel Sterling. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any question. And I believe that they're still digesting what you have said. But I have one final question, Colonel, before I close. And it's what kind of support or how can the MIS officers within the institutions continue to support? Because we see where sometimes the MIS officers, for want of a better word, they're torn between management and the staff. And sometimes we allow things to slide, for wanting of a better term too. What advice do you give to those officers in carrying out the mandate of securing the posture of the entity, whether it be private or public sector?
Thank you for the question. The MIS officers have a hard job. The manner in which ICT is treated across the public sector does not necessarily allow for the required levels of resourcing, and the challenges that they face are not going to be limited to the level of resourcing that they get. The ICT officers have to learn to talk finance and business outcomes and not just ICT. Hopefully, By being able to do that, they will get management at every level to appreciate the impact of not resourcing ICT as it should be. Secondly, the managers have to appreciate that as we drive into the process of becoming a digital economy, information becomes our treasure. And the ability to secure it and to utilize it in the best way to achieve our business outcomes is going to be paramount as we drive along this journey. As such, the management and executive levels in MDAs and other organizations must appreciate that the days of giving MIS officers basket to carry water really need to be behind us. And even though it cannot necessarily be done in one budget cycle, there has to be a holistic, comprehensive, and resourced plan to move from the state at which some entities are to the state where they need to be in order to effect sometimes baseline minimum security for information resources and to prevent some of the inevitable from being as devastating as they can be.
Okay, thank you, Colonel. So I'm seeing a hand in the ch and that's a Laura Levy.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the presentation. To be honest, as a layperson, some of it went over my head, but I am left with the overall impression that I probably am at risk and need to get on to that. But I did have a quick question. You mentioned visitors coming to your home and having your Wi-Fi password. If you had given a visitor your Wi-Fi password, and let's say this person is hacker level skills, if you change your password, will the person still be able to access your information? I'm not talking about stealing Wi-Fi service. I'm talking about getting into your information via your Wi-Fi network. Would changing the password alone do it? If not, what would?
Thank you for the question. It's really two parts to your question. The first is whether or not you would have compromised yourselves or make yourself vulnerable by sharing your password. On the face of it, the answer is no, because the other things that are connected to your network ought to have localized passwords to them. However, if that person is there on your network with that level of skill, and it's curious why they would have your password anyway. But what you really need to be able to do once the person logs off your network is to scan your network to see whether or not he or she left anything on your network. So if all they got was access to the internet to be able to do whatever they were doing and they've left your premises, then the question is whether or not a Trojan was left on your network, or they would have created a backdoor into your network whilst they were connected. The sophistication of your home network will allow you to really sort of scan that. But if you can't, then hopefully the antivirus or other software that you have on your mobile devices, such as your laptop and or cell phones, you'll be able to scan it. Additionally, you should be able to check with the router by logging into the admin page to see whether or not anything else happened. So that password that you shared initially should just be to access internet connectivity. It really shouldn't be to access the administration page for your router or any other device on your network. So the short answer is no. But if you feel concerned, then have the network scanned and have all the devices scanned and updated if that's the case for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, man.
Thank you very much, Ms. Levy, for that question. Are there any other questions? All right. So I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat or otherwise. So, Lieutenant Colonel Sterling, we thank you for today's presentation. Uh, I'm seeing a chat. Rajal Yuto with tools. Colonel Sterling, there's a question in the chat. With tools such as flippers, zeros, and there are many other recommendations being put forward to have this regulated on the broader scale, considering its ability to breach IoT's device such as gate. Is there a question? Gate or door? Okay. Colonel?
All right. So Mr. Huta did not really ask a question, but the
Yeah.
point he's making is one that ought not to be lost on us. We have to be careful about overregulation, eh? And especially in an environment where legitimate or um, ethical hackers and security researchers play a significant part in the whole securing of our cyber ecosystem. We don't want to get to the point where for those legitimate users of the technology, it becomes almost a criminal or felony, a criminal offense or otherwise for them to have it. But we have to ensure that when it is brought in, it is brought in for the right reasons. And the Ministry of National Security have a list of prohibited items within that sphere that can be checked against. The fact is that you can buy it, you can bring it in, and probably the customs agent won't even know what they're looking at. The challenge, therefore, is for us to appreciate the vulnerability that the existence of it in our space creates, and to try to mitigate those vulnerabilities by ensuring that things like NFC, Bluetooth, quick share, etc., that we're not using, we turn them off on our devices. With respect to the cars, short of putting your key fob into a box that does not allow for the transmission of signals, it's difficult to guard against, and we have to bear that in mind.
Thank you for that. So, Colonel Sterling, we thank you for your presentation. It was well received. I think we're still digesting bits and pieces of what was shared with us today. And there is much more that you could have said, but with constraint of time, we have to stop for today. So thank you. And as we progress through the course of this month, we'll have much more time for other discourse, and I'm sure Lieutenant Colonel will share as we go along. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for participating today in today's session, and I know you would have enjoyed today as much as I did. And tomorrow is another day for another wonderful presentation. I hope you'll join us tomorrow as well. Continue to keep abreast of our social media handles to see what we have in store for this National Cyber Awareness Month. Do have a blessed afternoon. Take care. Walk good. Thank you for joining us today. Goodbye.